Let's talk about deliverance ministry and children for a moment. There's sometimes when parents come to me frustrated because of their kids and they see the patterns they have in their children and they suspect some kind of demon oppression of some sorts in their children. And I'm a Christian. I believe in demons. They're real. I believe that Satan has an agenda in our world trying to influence us on a number of different levels using direct demonic activity, using culture, using all kinds of social media and all kinds of worldly system kinds of things that take place. And yes, our children are exposed to those things and they greatly influence our children. I also believe it's important to pray for our children. And I'm going to share with you a specific prayer in just a moment that I think will be really helpful for you as you pray for your kids. But we also have to realize that it's more complicated than that. And just praying for a child or trying to remove demonic oppression isn't the only part of the solution. We must also change what children believe. We must wrestle with their desires that they have inside. They're often leading them down paths of temptation that are wrong. We want to help children develop bad patterns that they've developed in their lives. We want to help them change those. And so it's much more complicated than just deliverance kind of ministries. Although I do believe that praying for our children is powerful, and in our coaching program, we embrace that as part of what we do, because the spiritual impact in a person's life affects how they change. And that's true with adults and children. And so if we're going to bring about change in a child's life, we must recognize that the spiritual influences that exist and the grace of God, the spiritual power that God gives us, is so strong and important in bringing about internal change. So we have to keep all of that in mind as we're working with our kids. So do work on things like changing beliefs and bridling desires and working on emotions. All those things are important, but you also want to be praying for your kids. And I want to tell you a story about my own son. When he was young, I would pray for him every night before he went to bed. I put my hands on his head or on his shoulder and I would say, Lord, I just pray for Josh. Give him a good night's sleep and good dreams. I pray for him every night that I was home. And it was part of our routine. And he would say, Dad, would you pray for me? And I would do that. Even in his teen years, he would have me pray for him. Well, he went off to Bible college as a young man, and in his first couple months of Bible college, he calls back and he says, Dad, I'm in this dorm with 5 other guys. We're in bunk beds here in the room. And some of these guys have done some bad things in their lives. And man, they have terrible dreams at night. And so I was telling him, he says, my dad used to pray for me and put his hand on my head and say, God, I pray you give Josh good dreams and good night's sleep. And so here's what they said, Dad. They said, would you pray for us? So my son went around and put his hand on each one of these guys and prayed that God would bless them with a good night's sleep and good dreams. Why? Because we believe in the power of prayer. We believe that God uses his spirit to protect us, and we want to empower or invoke the power of God in the lives of our children. So as part of your parenting strategy, be sure you're praying for your kids and make that a valuable part of what you're doing, because there's a lot of things going on in our world today. Now, I wrote a book called How a Heart-Based Approach to Parenting Changes Everything, and one chapter of that book is about spiritual influences in our child's life. 7 lies that the world teaches and the truths that we must teach our children to counter those lies. You might want to pick up that book. You can do so at biblicalparenting.org. It's a tremendous book that'll help you wrestle with some of these very important things that bring about change in the lives of our children. And spiritual integration of our faith into our parenting is a strategic part of that.